the meaning we give things. Because the meaning we give, there's a couple of things about meaning that I find really interesting, which is that, first of all, we have complete choice as to the meaning we give any single moment of our lives, or any interaction, or any definition. We get to choose that meaning that we want to give it, and the second piece about that is most of the time we don't act that way. We act like what's going on, the meaning is in it, and we're stuck with that meaning. I was down at the river, which I like to do, the McNally High School, which is, I think, in that direction. I'm catching on around here. Has this overlook, right? And I go there almost every single day to look at the river and we'll look at the city beyond it. And in the wintertime, it's frozen solid. And then now I went there and it's flowing free again. And I started thinking about, what if when it was frozen solid, I got the idea in my head that because I'm a powerful, creative, spiritual being, I should be able to melt it now. I should be able to just unstuck that thing. That's right. Doesn't that sound silly? Yeah, except we do it all the time, right? We get something in our lives gets stuck, and we think it ought to be moving and flowing. And then the meaning we make out of that is that we must not be powerful. Or if we know anything about this teaching, maybe we're not doing it right. Right? We get stuck in our heads around the stuck because of the meaning we give it and our unwillingness to let go and understand that spring is coming and it will melt and it's beautiful, that I don't have to force it. But if the meaning I give it is that I should be able to force it, boy, I'm going to spend some time beating myself up. Am I the only one? Yep. Part of the problem that we run into is we forget that the meaning we're giving something as good or bad is just the meaning we're giving it. It doesn't make it so. Right? There's that old Zen story I've told you guys before, and now I'm going to tell you again about the farmer who had one horse, and that horse runs away. And his neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. Your horse ran away. That's the only horse you got." And the farmer goes, "Oh, maybe." And a few days later, that horse comes back with 2 mares and a colt. And the neighbor comes over and goes, "That's incredible. That's fantastic." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." And then the farmer's son tries to break the new horses and instead falls off and breaks his own leg. And the neighbor comes over and goes, "Oh, that's terrible. He's broken his leg." And the farmer goes, "Oh, maybe." And about less than a week later, the army comes through, drafting any young men of able-bodied, of which he isn't because he has a broken leg. And so something happens in your life, and you give it the meaning of good or bad, not realizing that you have no idea how that's leading you. Now, I've done that. I went through a lot of my life thinking, "Oh my God, I failed again." There was times I was like, "I'm such a loser." And now I look back on those times and I'm like, thank God they didn't work out. The blessing of that. But it didn't feel like that at the time because of the meaning I gave it. What meaning are you giving what's happening right now in your life? Because you could be giving it a meaning that is either bringing you down or building you up. And maybe you're saying to yourself, oh, Cliff, you don't know my life. What I got going on, oh, it's bad. Well, last summer I'm in the hospital with doctors telling me I'm not going to see another day. Now, I know I keep bringing this up, but it was this transformative moment for me, right? And you could easily, and I was in all this pain, it would have been really easy to see that as something really bad. Except I came out of that experience thinking, oh my God, that was awesome. That was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. That's the meaning I gave it because of all the different ways I was able to be in the moment using these teachings and watching how that whole thing unfolded in a way that I stayed peaceful and centered and allowed myself to make my own choice about living and dying, not leaving it up to the doctors. Now, I've seen other people come out of situations like that feeling devastated by it. I came out thinking it was awesome. Not that I'm recommending it, just so we're clear. But we can take these experiences that could easily, like there's this agreement that goes on, right? Agreement that goes on. And that's the thing about a lot of this. I love etymology, right? I love looking at the history of words. And one of my favorite words is sin. Right? Its original meaning in the Greek, it was an archer's term to miss the mark. We use it very differently today. Through agreement, not through intrinsic value of the word. Right? Somebody tells me, I've got a brother who's very big on telling me how much I've sinned. And I'm like, yeah, I've missed the mark some. That's true. But I don't buy into its meaning today. I get to give it that meaning. You get to give it the meaning you want. And by doing that, you get to transform yourself. Is the meaning you're giving something lifting you up or bringing you down? It's the meaning you're giving your experiences that are doing that, not the experiences. And so that's the thing about it. Right? So, another piece about meaning is that you could be in a group of people and thinking you're agreeing on something, what something means, and maybe that's not the case. And how do you know if you don't ask, right? If you don't say, what do you mean by that? What does that mean to you? And that way you can be in a group of people and start to look at meaning and coming together on something that is uplifting for everybody present. We have this thing here called shared leadership. If you go on the internet and you check the definition of shared leadership, I found close to 50 different definitions for shared leadership. Home office, they have this thing in their bylaws that says shared leadership, but if you read the definition, it sounds a lot more like consensus leadership, which to me is a very different thing than shared leadership, where other people may feel that's not so different. I love the sound of children, by the way. They don't have to leave the room. They're like the sounds of birds to me. So don't feel like you got to leave the room with the kids. Just so we're clear about that. And so, once again, your leaders of this community came together to discuss, well, how are we defining shared leadership? Because it's important to know, how we're doing this and if we're on the same page. And it was quite a passionate and heated discussion. But after 2 hours, we came up with a definition that was so uplifting to all of us. And the best part is, let me read you the definition we came up with. It would have been up there. Sue made this great slide. Got it right here. This is what was going to be up there. I know you can see it really well. I'm going to read it to you. Shared leadership is demonstrating our purpose, vision, and mission by sharing responsibility, decision-making, and accountability through high relationship, collaboration, and trust within and between teams. We welcome creativity, innovation, and joy. Is that killer? Does that feel uplifting? That's bringing meaning to something that everybody can get behind. You see how that can work. You can do this in your own life. Find meaning that lifts you instead of brings you down. And the greatest part about this definition for me was everybody who was in the room that day lived up to this completely while we came up with the definition. This is how we behaved. This is how we were with each other. It was an incredibly loving, open, and sharing environment. That's what makes meaning beautiful when it's used that way. Instead of thinking you're stuck with meaning, that's bringing you down. And sometimes, if you're really curious, you get to discover new meanings you didn't even know existed. Right? Most of the time at my house, I wake up first. Ash wakes up first. I'm sorry. Ash gets up first. But every once in a while, I get up first. And so this one day, this week, I got up, and as I do every morning, I put water in the kettle for my tea. But I had this the reason I was up is I had this project in mind I've been working on. So I go into my office and I continue working on this project and completely forget about the water in the kettle until all of a sudden I hear my wife go, "Oh, you put water in the kettle for me." And I come out and go, "Yes, I did." Because I put the water in the kettle and it was now for her. I didn't even know that had meaning for her. That had never dawned on me. It hadn't come up. And so a couple of days later, when I was the first one up again, I put water in the kettle for her after I had my tea. Because now I knew. Right? We discover meaning. We discover meaning as we're going along by being curious and open and not being stuck with the meanings that we think are present. I'm very curious about lots of things, and one of them has to do with history. You've heard me talk a lot about it. Turns out that every religion throughout the ages has had the gods that were on your side, and then these other gods were not so much. Right? They were like tricksters. They weren't bad, but you had to watch out for them. But they weren't bad. They didn't put the meaning on them that they were bad. And so in the Viking religions, they had Loki. Loki wasn't considered bad. He was just somebody you had to watch out for because he was going to give you lessons in a very tricking manner. In First Nation culture, it's the coyote. Coyote medicine is considered some of the highest and most powerful medicine, but it's coming at you from the place you're not looking. So it makes you more aware. Christianity came up with the devil. Bad. And there was a lot of agreement that went around that. And so it's up to you. Just because there's a lot of agreement doesn't mean you gotta go with that. And if you're not overting what something means to you, then the person you're sitting next to, the person you think you're relating to the most, may not know. You may have, the person you've been living with 30 years may not know. Or I've been living with her 10 and I had no idea that having water in the kettle when she got up had meaning for her. You just don't know, right? Unless you ask, unless you're curious, unless you're open, unless you're willing to see that there's a possibility of another meaning here than the one you've given it. I was watching this movie. It's called Tumble Down. And it was an okay movie, but it had this scene that really got me. And it's about a professor it's about a singer-songwriter who puts out a 12-song album that becomes iconic and then shortly thereafter dies. And this professor wants to do a biography on this musician. When this professor was a little kid, his father took his own life. Okay? And so he's coming at this from the fact of for direction and thinking and meaning that this was a tortured musician who must have taken his own life. Especially once he learns from the widow that he fell off a mountain the day of their anniversary, a mountain he'd walked on 100 million times before. And so the professor was sure that this guy took his own life. And then, so he's up there, and notice if you do this, you have an idea of what something means, and then you find evidence, right? So he's up there building evidence to back up his idea that this guy killed himself. The widow and him discover a recorded song that neither of them knew about. The widow didn't even know about it. And they listen to this song together. The professor listens to the lyrics of the song and goes, there it is. There's the proof. Listen to the lamenting in those lyrics. Listen to how it speaks to how much he was tortured in life. He even says at the end how much he loves you, as if he's saying goodbye right then and there. The widow goes, you don't know what you're talking about. I wrote those lyrics about him and I having sex in the snow. And he put music to it for our anniversary. Meaning, are you building evidence or are you curious? Are you open to a meaning that will support you in rising or one that's bringing you down? Whatever your experience, it's up to you to bring the meaning to it that will support you. There's a myriad of ways to look at anything. You can come out of the worst of situations going, it's awesome. I've done that, so I know. Or you can come out of it feeling devastated. It's your call, but I want to support you in rising. I want to support you in your curiosity, in your creativity, in your magnificence. Whatever the situation is, whatever your experience, there is a way in which it is leading you towards your magnificence, no matter how it feels, no matter what you're going through. Check the meaning you're giving it. I highly recommend giving it a meaning that supports you in rising up. I love you. Thank you so much.